Hi. Anger is powerful. It's so powerful, in fact, that often holding on to and expressing anger towards someone can be perceived as a form of punishment. And punishments trigger the fight, flight, and freeze reaction. And once that reaction gets triggered in our listener, it becomes so hard for them to stay in an honest and empathetic connection with ourselves. Similarly, anger cuts us off from our own needs. It makes it really hard for us to stay connected to our own needs. This is because anger is connected to the amygdala. The amygdala is a region of the brain within the limbic system. And remember that the limbic system is associated with the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. This is opposed to the neocortex system, which is associated with emotional regulation, planning, communication, and empathy. So when we act on our anger, we're using our limbic system as opposed to and at the expense of our neocortex. And this manifests itself by that effect when we get really angry, all we can focus on is our mental judgment that things should be different in some way. And we can't really connect with the real needs that we'd like to get met. So what is anger? Well, simply put, anger is an unmet need coupled with a mental should judgment. That is, we make a judgment that things should be different in some way. Let me give you an example. I might think, Sally should clean up after herself. I shouldn't have to do it all the time. Or maybe I think, Bill shouldn't be such a jerk. He should really show me more respect. Now, of course, I may not always think like that. So, I may actually say in my head, Sally is a slob, or Bill is a jerk. But when we rephrase these judgments as should statements, it becomes a lot easier for us to identify what judgments we're making and to let those go, and then to identify and connect with our genuine needs. But before we discard these mental judgments and anger as bad behavior, let's first try to understand what purpose they're serving in us. For remember, all actions are strategies to meet needs. And that includes judgments and anger. So, what are judgments and anger trying to serve in us? Well, here's how anger normally works. First, we have an unmet need. So I come into the living room, there's a bunch of stuff laying around. My need for order and cleanliness really isn't met. Then, this state really, a number of things could arise from me. So maybe this reminds me of something in my past, or maybe this need has been left unmet for just so long, or maybe it's just such an important and vital need to myself that to get it met is necessary to get so many of my other needs met. So staying with our example, maybe seeing the messy room reminds me of when I was a kid and I had a sibling who always left a bunch of messes, and I was always told to clean up after him. Maybe I've lived with this child and raised this child for 18 years, and I've cleaned up after her far more often than I would have liked. Or maybe my need for cleanliness and orderliness is just so important to me that I really need that need to get met first before I can really get my other needs met. Now, once we're in one of these situations, we really fall into despair and we start to get desperate. We're despairing over the fact that this need is unmet and it doesn't seem that it'll ever get met unless we do something about it. And the most effective and efficient way we've learned how to get that need met is by using anger. So maybe the only times I remember my sibling helping me clean is when I've lashed out at him. Or maybe the only times I remember my daughter cleaning up the living room was when I put her in timeout. Or maybe the only way I know how to be heard and to get my needs met is by using anger and punishments. So we can see then that anger and mental judgments really may serve our needs for effectiveness and efficiency. And maybe since it's the only way we know, and it seems to do just as good of a job as anything else we know, it also meets our needs for ease, simplicity. But how often have we used anger and a situation become even more tragic? That at the end of the interaction, there were even more unmet needs than at the beginning. Luckily, though, there's another way. So first, let's start with an observation. I walk into the room and I observe that there are many, many things laying on the floor. So I might ask myself, how do I feel about that? I feel really exhausted when I see that. And then I might ask myself, what needs are driving or fueling that exhaustion? Well, I have a need for orderliness and cleanliness. And maybe I've had a really long day and I just need some rest. And cleaning up the house really won't meet that need. Or maybe I've come into the living room so many times in just the past month and it's looked just like this that I just don't have any trust with Sally anymore. In short, empathy. Empathy is the antidote to the anger, judgment, punishment system. Anger helps us reconnect with our deepest needs and then to express from there, to short-circuit our anger and rather become able to make more honest and compassionate requests.